of the Wilson-Brustein debate reenactment. I teach on faculty here in the Department of Dramatic Arts, and by profession for 25 years I was a director, playwright and dramaturge for the theatre. In the studio work that we do, we have to get people to create from where they are, and that means that confronting your own identity, working with your own identity from the power of where you stand, is essential to any creative work. You have to be able to create out of your anger, your dreams, your vulnerability and your joy. And August Wilson, the playwright, the great African-American playwright, understood this. He did a keynote speech for the Theatre Communications Group in 1996 called "The Ground on Which I Stand," where he argued for a black theatre, for a black culture, that instead of assimilating black artists to the white-dominated mainstream, gave blacks a place, as he said it, to hang their hat. And there was enormous backlash, controversy following this speech that he made. It raged in the pages of the New York Times and American Theatre Magazine for about a year, and eventually it got so strong that the Theatre Communications Group decided to hold a town hall in New York in 1997, where August Wilson confronted his nemesis, I guess you could call him, Robert Brustein, the great American critic, the artistic director of the Yale Drama School, a playwright and a director himself, who said that he was also concerned, as was August Wilson, to bring African-American playwrights, artists and actors into the mainstream. It's just that Brustein's manner of doing so was very, very different. So the two had a debate. It was a hot ticket affair. Anyone went to this debate. It was star-studded. It was also a night of horrible weather, so people got trapped outside in the rain, where people were scalping tickets. They couldn't get into the theatre. The whole event started really late, and tempers were high at the beginning of the debate. Frank Rich called it an event which was the intellectual equivalent to extreme fighting. But in fact, the two men were polite and each stated his case. I guess the issues were somewhat clarified, but looking at the debate from 20 years later, it's pretty plain that not much has changed. We need to continue this debate. We need to understand, and I think that critical race theory has given us terms by which we can understand the terms of the debate a little bit more clearly. It's rather harder for Robert Brustein's argument to stand now, and it's rather harder for August Wilson's argument to stand now. What inspired me to produce this was in large part conversations with students, and in particular a conversation that happened after the last main stage that we did about the makeup of the department and about the way that plays were chosen and roles were cast. In our department, among the faculty, we talk about this all the time. We talk about how to support our diverse students. We teach critical performance studies. We ask those questions about why does Shakespeare have world domination? Who does this benefit? We ask those questions continually. And we were glad when the students started to ask those questions themselves. So it's no longer just coming from, the front of the classroom. It's coming from the body of the students. And we felt, okay, this is fantastic. We have to continue this dialogue, and we need a few events where we can do this. What I want more than anything is that people will just talk about it. That feeling of, I can't talk about it, it's awkward, I can't talk about it, I might say the wrong thing. What if I refer to a minoritized group by the wrong noun or adjective? What if I myself come across as a racist and nobody wants to be viewed that way? But if you don't risk a little by entering into the discourse, then you can't learn. Learning is always associated with being vulnerable and opening oneself to new phrases. Everyone can put their foot in their mouth, and we need to create a safe place where that can happen.
My name's David Fancy, and I teach here in the Department of Dramatic Arts. I've been here for 12 or 13 years, and I teach performance courses and theory courses and look at the interaction between performance and the ways in which we can use performance to think, or vice versa. I think it's curious and interesting that we're doing it. I think there are many other kinds of ongoing conversations that could be referenced, and I suspect those will come up in the discussion that follows the presentation. But I think this crystallizes some of the key concerns that were present when the debate originally happened, and perhaps unsurprisingly are still very germane today. Okay, so I'm playing the role of theater critic Robert Brustein, an influential American theater critic, journalist, commentator. And he had a very public set of responses and discussions to some of August Wilson, Black American playwright's work, and the statements that Wilson had made about the importance of ensuring that black artists in the US had the opportunity to voice their identities through the creation of their work. And sort of Brustein responded to that in ways that evidenced a certain amount of unconscious white supremacy. And so the discussion between them, organized and framed in this context with the assistance of Black American playwright and performer Anna Deveare Smith, sort of supplies us with a state of the nation, if you will, at the time about these issues around colorblind casting, around appropriation of voice, about who gets to tell whose story. And there's a kind of a tone deafness to Brustein's remarks. Brustein, like many of his generation or many of his persuasion, has unconscious sets of assumptions about the centrality of white culture to American life. And he speaks about the importance of the universalism in arts, and that this universalism and the unconscious white identity position should be adopted by everyone. Wilson, on the other hand, recognizes that identity positions are constructed via power conflicts in time and space, and in part very much through culture, and makes a solid argument for the need to respect that connection between self-identity, public performance, particularly as a black artist or as an artist of color. I, over the last couple of years, have done quite a bit of work around issues of diversities and actor training, working with colleagues across the country to generate a set of teaching video resources about this, to look at issues of representation or race, gender, ability, class. And so these are issues that are really important to me. Anytime I put on a show, I'm encouraging my students to think very concretely and very theoretically simultaneously about the ways in which how we tell each other's stories can often promote, despite one's best intentions, gendering, racializing, othering discourses. So I come from that political perspective. And then, of course, in the department, it's of continued significance, I believe, that we talk about issues of identity and racialization and othering via minoritizing by various means when it comes to casting our main stage productions. The ways in which this intersects with some of the material that I teach in the program, it's really actually quite connected, in the sense that we see in Brustein an articulation of certain positions of unconscious white supremacy, where white identity is rendered invisible and essentialized. And conversely, we see August Wilson articulating what we might describe as a post-colonial perspective, or a critical race perspective about the importance of avoiding appropriation of voice by the central normative social forces. And these are things that we discuss in that fourth year class you were referencing, Dark 4F90. These kinds of materials are engaged with across the praxis curriculum in the department. It's just a very particular point of fourth year working through these materials in some complexity, but I think the students in fourth year and across the department will find it illustrative of many of the things that we talk about in class. I think that it's important that we recognize that these are ongoing discussions. While this debate may have happened 20 odd years ago, that doesn't mean that the issues aren't relevant today. And it certainly doesn't mean that there's something that we can look at as a museum piece from the past. The notion of a re-performance of this debate, I think, is interesting because, for a variety of reasons, but primarily it invites us to continue to recognize that these are long-term issues that are going to take a long time to figure out, and that we need to have conceptual conversancy about them, and we've got to recognize that the issues and concepts about racialization, minoritization, colorblind casting, all the ways in which this intersects with the theater industry, really need to be engaged with if we're going to have increasing diversities across both the conceptual but also the platform of the industries themselves.
So my name is Lena Hall, and I'm in my fourth year. I'm a Con Ed student with drama as my first teachable and English as my second. Gyllian approached me with this piece that I'm extremely excited about. I remember the first time reading it over and just had a lot of questions, so I'm excited to tackle this. So I am playing Anna Deveare Smith. I'm the mediator of the debate. And Miss Smith is a playwright, an actor, a professor, a civil rights activist. So I find her as a person just fascinating. I'd seen her in a few different shows. She's on TV too. And so I'd seen her there, but I didn't know anything about her and nothing. I didn't even know about this debate before I was approached by Gyllian with it. Obviously, the first step was just to read over the debate and look up all of the different players in the debate, and also just go over a lot of the different plays that they were talking about. And I think it's actually kind of interesting because August Wilson's Fences has been turned into a movie with Denzel Washington, so I think it's interesting that we're tackling this right now. And so as soon as Gyllian sent this to me, I really started investigating about Anna and looking up a bunch of her different works, reading interviews with her, and I actually found a lot of similarities between, I guess, her beliefs and what I thought about the debate, which was interesting. I found that at first she remained definitely a third party. She was purely just a moderator and allowing the two gentlemen to converse between themselves. But later on, I think a lot of her beliefs started to come out, and her questioning both men, and well, like just looking at her pieces, like Twilight Los Angeles and Fire in the Mirror, she's playing so many different roles. She's playing African American men and women. She's playing white Jewish men and women. So I think for her, I think her stance on the debate is just having a lot of honesty and being able to share these other stories and be these other people, but be completely honest with them. But it's difficult, obviously. Like I think the debate, there was no concrete answer that they found, because I don't think there is a concrete answer that could be determined from the debate. I hope that it opens up a lot of conversations, because it's difficult talking about race. It's extremely hard and it's extremely awkward, but it's something that I don't think we're doing enough of. So I think this, if someone is to get anything out of this debate, it should be the confidence or the ability just to ask questions and want to start having a conversation with people that maybe you haven't before, or on topics that you haven't touched on before. And I think because this is my last year in Dart, I'm like really proud or excited to be opening up this kind of conversation, because I think for a long time in Dart I've been noticing and I've been affected by a lot of, or like a lack of discussion about race, which is difficult when this is your identity. So I think finally being able to talk about this in an open discussion, and I'm really excited for the talk back afterwards, because I think a lot of people have a lot of really great things to say. So I'm excited to hear some feedback.
Brock graduated from '07. I've been working in Toronto pretty much ever since as an actor, creator, writer. Came up with a Shakespeare hip-hop school program that I've been touring to different schools in the Toronto, Greater Toronto area. And then, yeah, for the last year, I've been working at Soul Pepper, and I'll be here until 2018 as part of their Soul Pepper Academy, which has reintroduced the classics to me and is really like pushing me outside of my comfort zone. I remember the fourth year having a meeting with Gyllian, and Gyllian really pushing me towards becoming a triple threat. She thought I had like a musical theater ability hidden within me, and I totally disagreed. But what I decided to do was to come to Toronto and just apply for apprenticeships, meet people, kind of just get my face into the scene and find out like how best to maneuver from there. And I found that no one gave a shit about Brock, and so I had to like essentially retrain myself and start from the bottom. And so there's a theater company called Obsidian, and they're ran by Philip Aiken. And they're like, I think the foremost black-focused theater company, probably in Canada, definitely Toronto. And so I just started doing a lot of like readings and workshops with them, and then that led to some shows I started doing at Factory Theater. And then before I knew it, it was becoming a consistent thing. So yeah, there isn't really like a formula that I can pinpoint or remember, but definitely like getting as involved as I can. I can tell you how much volunteering and unpaid readings and workshops that I did that didn't pay off immediately, but you know, after 10 years or so, I think they have shown the fruit of my labor. I've been in the Academy since August of last year, and we've spent 5 works doing some Shakespeare intensive with Albert Schultz, and then we focused on Greek tragedy with a director named Alan Dilworth for about 6 other weeks, and now we're currently doing Chekhov with a guy named Daniel Brooks. I have the honor and privilege of playing August Wilson, the acclaimed African-American, there we go, playwright, who had a debate with this director named Robert Wilson about the importance of creating or establishing theater companies whose focus is on non-white stories. He felt that America should start funding racially exclusive theater companies, not as a way of like ostracizing other cultures, but as a way of being able to tell stories that are indicative of a particular culture that you can then share with others. And then Wilson was like, nah, we need to just have colorblind casting. That's what we need. Let's ingratiate everyone and tell the same Eurocentric stories, but just have other people playing white people. I have like 8 of his plays at home. I know his whole 10-play series where he writes a different play about a different era, a different decade, from like the 1900s all the way up until the 2000s. So I know how prolific he is as a playwright. And in reading the debates, a lot of the stuff he's saying, it's weird that it still applies to today. So if anything, so far it's just jarring that things haven't changed as much. So there might be a level of pessimism that I bring to this, which I think is necessary for where he's at and for where the climate is at as well. But as far as research goes, like I'm not trying to emulate him. I'm not trying to make him. I'm not doing a biopic. this is like my interpretation of who he is. So yeah, he'll probably be an amalgamation of different people in my life who I think remind me of him. And then trying to figure out what exactly his central argument is, and just keeping that in my mind as I read through it a bunch of times. And I might buy a hat. I know he likes to wear lots of Kangol hats. So yeah. I've been coming back to Brock intermittently since graduating. The faculty's asked me to speak to first years occasionally, and there is something about giving back, or like letting future Brock graduates know that it is possible to be here and work if that's what you want to do. My generation, a lot of them wanted to be teachers, and that's totally fine with doing that. But it is feasible and it's hard. But if I can let people or show people that it's possible to do so, that's one reason. Reason number two is the conversation around diversity is so diverse. It's so hot right now in Toronto. And last summer I did a show called Father Control from the Wars, which was a Susan Lord Parks adaptation of Homer's The Odyssey, but it took place during slavery, and it was about a slave named Hero who had to go and fight in the Confederate War against the Union Army because he was a slave, so he was fighting against his master. And it was all about like the idea of ownership, and do you have the ability to say no to your owner, and if so, and what does that do to you, and what is a voice and identity and all that stuff. And the more work like that I do, the more I think it's important to start talking about how does culture play a role in the work that we start to do. As we get older, like this older generation of audience members, we're dying. And I think there's a new wave of young people who represent a very broad spectrum of people around the globe. And we need to start telling stories that are more reflective of that. So hopefully this debate can incite some conversation around what sort of stories we want to tell, as we move forward. And I think August is on the right idea. It's important to engage in the discussion versus pretend that it doesn't exist, or to skate over it, or to say, it doesn't really involve me. I feel uneducated. Like I'm all for saying the wrong thing and being told that you're saying the wrong thing. But if you don't actually speak, then there's no way for us to know how you feel about certain things. So yeah, I'm curious to hear people's response to the reading and how people feel about either side of the debate. Do they think that, especially at Brock, is color like casting an issue, or like what sort of plays are you doing right now in the department? And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to do this play, is to talk about like what is colorblind casting, and like how it totally erases the culture of the person who is taking over that role, right? Because if the character is historically white, but you aren't, then like how does that change your relationship to the people who know the character, your backstory? Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that needs to be addressed, and when it's not, it's kind of lazy, to be honest with you. I was shocked to receive Gyllian's email, actually, and shocked that the student body has demanded it, and shocked that the faculty had actually taken notice and decided to do something. Like, I think that's 10 years removed. I did not expect Brock to do something like this, and it I don't know, it makes me feel kind of proud, actually, about the people that they're accepting into the program, and the fact that you all are not being silent, and I think that's fantastic. Another reason why I want to come back. I want to, I think it's indicative of the times. We're not quiet anymore. We are vocal. We want to be heard. We have things to say. So it makes me feel good that Brock is doing something like this. I didn't get my voice, and my voice comes and goes, but I didn't find it until 2 summers ago. I was in a car accident, and I was bedridden for like 2 months, I had an audition for a play in Blythe. It was called Wilberforce Hotel, and it was about a colony of, I think, 1,000 black people from New York who migrated to London, Ontario in 1863. And in 4 years, the Canadian government said, we don't want you here anymore, and told them to get out. And so the play is like the last night of this man. His name's Austin Stewart.
Okay.
And he wrote a book called 20 Years a Slave, 40 Years a Free Man. And reading the book, being in Blythe, population of 1,000, for the summer, doing a play that was so Canadian, and yet no one knew about it, I realized that there's a truthfulness in telling a story that's so that speaks to me, that's so relatable to me, and I felt like I felt like the show was working on 2 levels. Like I wasn't just servicing a play; the play was also like servicing me. I feel as though now I'm actually representing an entire like race as like as much as that. Yeah, I feel like I am. So I go in and I do research and I ask questions and I really make it difficult for the director as far as just placing me in a role without any context, without a discussion around it.
Right.
Yeah, if the story doesn't call for it, if it's a more contemporary, modern day exploration of humanity, then I don't think we need to address it. But if it's a classic or if it's a play that is traditionally performed by Eurocentric or whatnot people, then a discussion needs to be had.
Right.
Yeah, that's all I do. It's funny, I didn't think about it that much. I was pretty oblivious, and I can't quite pinpoint like a moment when I opened my eyes. Like the Wilberforce thing helped, but I don't know. You know what it might have been? So Wilberforce, and then I did a show called We're Proud to Present.
Okay.
And We're Proud to Present was a 6-hander about 3 white actors and 3 black actors who are trying to put on a show about a genocide that took place in Namibia at the turn of the century. And it was a whole bunch of like German soldiers who came to Namibia and they erased this entire tribe. 800,000 members of this tribe no longer exist. So those people are no longer here.
Wow.
So the play is about like how do we tell this story? And the white actors in the play, they're like, well, we only have historical facts from the soldiers. So let's tell a story about a soldier who's writing a letter to his loved one back at home and is like romanticizing about being here with the natives of this land, blah, 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 blah. And all the black people are like, nah, this is whack. We need to tell a story about the African people who were here and how, right? But we don't have any evidence about them, so how can we tell their story? So the whole conversation is around like facts versus made up facts. But the facts only exist because the oppressors were able to come through and wipe out the people. So after that, I started realizing like these are the stories we're telling, and why are we telling them? Because colonialism has completely fucked up this planet. And when I started realizing that, I became a little angry, and I stopped going to certain places, and I stopped supporting certain companies. So I aligned myself with people in the industry like Philip Aiken, Obsidian, people who identify as people of color who have a voice, and being around them and feeling this confidence, feeling this ease, feeling like you get me, I get you, and taking that with me to different shows, and I mean, granted, I'm here and I'm doing classics, that's fine, but I don't see myself doing that when I get out of here. Like, there's more pertinent, prominent stories to be told, and I'm interested in that. I hope that it will force Brock to start bringing in more people of color in teacher advisory roles. I want them to start considering that. Like, it's not enough to just bring in students who are from different cultures, but we got to start bringing in teachers as well, and then start telling more broad stories, but not in a condescending way. I want them to be able to say, we want to do this show because it's current and our student body needs it, and I think it's important for the development of the program. So we expect.
So when you roll up on March 15th, you will find a theatre with about 200 people in it. You will meet David Fancy, who is going to play Robert Brustein. You will meet Marcel Stewart, an ex-Brock graduate and a close friend of the department, who will play August Wilson. You will meet Lena Hall, who is going to moderate between these two cultural titans. She's playing the playwright Anna Deveare Smith, who was the original moderator. You will experience the debate as the actors read the roles of the two men. We're going to have some audience participating, doing what the original audience at the event did, so there will be some hissing and some booing, and then after the whole thing is complete, there will be a talkback moderated by the wonderful Shannon Kitchens, who will help us to understand some of the threads and how they apply to our contemporary situation today, where the statistical representation of diverse actors in Canadian theatre is poor.